I've taken the intro for the last 2 episodes. George, do you want to take this one?
Hello and welcome to the unofficial podcast. At this point, we still haven't named it.
Yeah.
This is
because we're lazy.
I love anime. We are joined by Danny DeVito, Touchy Squirrel, and of course Voron. Introduce yourselves, I guess.
I like how you just went on and like over enunciated the Ron part of it.
You want me to Voron? Is that how it's meant to be said?
Voron.
And yes, I am Touchy Squirrel. God knows the audience knows that at this point. I have plugged myself more than flipping insert porn star's name here.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time till you have your own Pornhub channel.
But who's
Did you not know this
OnlyFans?
podcast is an OnlyFans exclusive?
Onlyfans.com/TouchySquirrel.
/ unofficial podcast.
Here, anyone want to follow my OnlyFans? It's a TikTok man. That's it.
Is it you doing a bunch of TikTok dances that people can see in your TikTok for free, but they have to pay $5.99 just to be able to see the same thing, but with the premium version, which turns out to be exactly the same thing?
It's the same thing, but I take all my clothes off, you know.
That's right.
Really
So you're kind of being a sex worker.
Yeah, Fortnite dances, but it's naked, I guess.
Nobody wants to see a naked floor.
I don't think we want to see it. I think a naked George especially we don't want to see.
Hit the woe
Please
with your
no.
cock out.
Whip your dick out. Whip your dick out.
Do a whip nay whilst whipping out the meat scepter.
Danny DeVito introduce himself.
Yeah. Hey.
I
like it.
Oh, subtle. Classic.
Minimalist.
Go vent, Callum.
People in cities who shouldn't have had their license. The amount of people who don't know how to indicate and don't know how to go into first fucking gear and pull away. You're in rush hour, right? You're at traffic lights, and then it goes green, and it takes people fucking 15 seconds to go away. How do you not know how to pull away in a first gear? In fact, you're probably not even in first gear. You're probably in automatic, and it still takes you until it's going amber for you to go away. And it's all very well for you. You've gone away, but I'm here at amber, so I can't go. So I've got to wait until the next light. And because it's rush hour, I've got it's fucking 2 minutes, like an entire 120 seconds until I'm away. I was coming home from work today, right? It took me 15 minutes to go probably about a quarter of a mile. And then you have people at junctions, right? And they know where they're going, obviously, because they're fucking driving, but they don't use their indicators to let people know whether they're going right or left. But then they pull out, and then they almost have a crash, and they have the audacity to, like, give the finger to the people who almost crashed into them. You know why you almost had a crash? Because you didn't fucking tell people where you're about to go!
Oh no!
Oh, I thought you were doing like a W. I was about to say that is not a W. That is an L. That is a fat L.
I can't believe we just watched this. What has been a relatively chill podcast previously just turned into
chaos.
Alex Jones.
And calm.
Basically.
And calm. A cursed Valuigi appears. I'm just referencing George. People who watch my streams know, but I'm a delivery driver for a delivery company. I'm not going to name them.
I see Wiener.
That's the company.
Yeah.
It's a sex toy delivery company.
Frozen sex toy delivery company.
Even better.
I see Wiener, very good. My route has country roads, take me home.
It's take you home country roads.
Oh, whatever.
Get it right.
It's a type of roads where you have maybe 1.5 lanes worth. Oh, by the way, people on country roads, as I say, 1.5 lanes worth. You know, you can't comfortably get past each other, which I admit is a bit of a bitch. But, you know, if you squeeze and if you take it slow, you can get 2 cars past each other.
Should I be taking minutes?
Are you learning to drive?
No, I'm just for our meeting. Should I be taking minutes?
If you are taking minutes, this is how to deal with arsehole drivers. And so
Shove the middle finger up to them as you pass them.
No. So
and then throw a Molotov at
anybody in an Audi or a BMW.
Write this down.
Oh, and fucking Land Rovers who then refuse to go onto the verge. It's like, you're in a fucking 4x4. I'm in a Peugeot 208. Which one of us is best equipped to go on the verge? Oh no, but I can't get my Land Rover dirty. It's not like it's meant to be off-road.
You know what's worse than the Land Rover drivers?
Range Rover drivers.
Exactly. And anything that's like a pretend SUV, that's like not a proper SUV.
Sorry.
People will just-
Sorry. Anyway, so okay, if you're on a country road, you tend to go into the middle. That's fine. But then you see somebody coming towards you, and you go off to the edge, right? To give them space.
Yeah.
Oh no, not this fucking Mini driver. They kept going, and almost crashed into me when I was like, your mum gay over me. Anyway, so they nearly, clipped my ring mirror off, and then they looked at me like I was the asshole when they were like a foot away from the verge. If you're gonna continue being in the middle of the road, I'm not the asshole here. If you'd moved to the edge, I mean, yeah, you're in a Mini Cooper. It's not exactly an off-road vehicle, but I'm in a Porsche 208. Neither's mine. But the amount of times I've gone up on a verge, it's just what you have to do.
I drive a Kia, and so anybody in a BMW or just anything that's either bigger or is worth more than my car, I get evils from those drivers.
Can I just cut in with something?
Okay.
Land Rover go burr.
Country roads have passing places, more often than not.
Yeah.
99% of people are decent. You meet someone, and you can't go either way. And so you kind of work out, okay, who's at the nearest passing place, and then whoever's at the nearest passing place, reverse to that passing place, and then let everyone go. Fine. But
Or
then,
who's going downhill and who's going uphill.
Yeah. But then you get asshole, like, BMW, Audi, Land Rover, Range... Actually, no. Land Rover drivers are more often than not good. It's Range Rover drivers.
Yes, because they're the self-righteous pricks who are going to pick up their kids from private school.
They're the ones who want a 4x4, but don't want to get it mucky. They're the pretend 4x4s. I hate Range Rovers, honestly.
Yeah, I will never drive a Range Rover.
It's
Volvo? I drive a Volvo.
The only thing is, Range Rovers are just luxury Land Rovers, right? They're meant to go off-road. I just hate people who buy Range Rovers and will never take it off-road. It's sacrilege. It's like, it's
people that have a Range Rover in a city.
Yeah, you've got this flipping machine. You're meant to be doing donuts on a dirt track, but you won't go up on a verge on it. Use it for what it's meant for.
Hold on, I'm gonna need to send a sad email back to Range Rover about the sponsorship.
It's pointed that Audible aren't sponsoring us yet.
Are you done talking about cars and road rage?
Actually, that's a good segue into our sponsor. I've got one today, right?
Perfect.
And
Do we get paid this time?
No, because they're fake sponsorships. What? Who said that? The sponsorship section is just my written jokes. By the way, if you guys want to bring your own sponsors, feel free.
Fine.
And this one is actually topical because I've got a bit of a cough at the moment. It's not COVID.
Nickel gave you COVID.
The flat's a bit cold, and I've got a bit of a sniffly nose. Anyway,
Cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love.
you've got a bit of a sniffly throat. Two things you need, right? You need throat lozenges and warm food, maybe porridge or something, or halls and oats.
Oh.
Sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
I said there's two things you need if you got like a sore throat: throat lozenges and hot food, porridge or something. Or
Yeah, I got that part.
halls and oats.
What?
Halls
This is
and
Daryl Hall
oats.
and John Oates.
You know halls and oats. And
Hall and
No.
Oates.
the
Daryl Hall and
the
John
throat
Oates.
lozenges halls,
No.
and
I don't know.
oats porridge, and then the soul band halls and oats.
The duo.
Yeah.
The what band?
Have you seriously never heard of halls and oats?
Halls.
Maneater. Kiss on my lost
Maneater,
private
what?
eyes.
What are you
The one
talking
that I
about?
listened to,
Because
Richard.
your kiss is on my list.
Wait, that
These private eyes are watching you.
Sorry,
is that the song that they used on the Google Docs advert or something?
what was
I
that?
don't know.
What was
what
their
you're
big
talking
hit? What was their big hit? Halls and
Maneater.
Oats.
And you make my dreams come true.
Yeah, you make my dream come true. That's it.
Oh,
I just know Rich Girl.
That's another one. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm just a big dum-dum. I don't get these things. You need to make really simple jokes.
Sorry, I'm
Really simple.
I'm sorry. Halls and Oats were massive. I thought you'd get
They-
it.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
and
know
they're still
brands.
popular.
Brands are one of the things
they still
that go over
going?
my head.
They're still going.
No
Yeah.
way.
Well, Daryl Hall is still going. and they occasionally played together.
I have a wonderful knack for blocking out capitalism. It's fantastic.
What about?
Hall Notes isn't a brand;
Teach
it's
me.
Oh, it's not a brand. What is
I
it
was
then?
making the joke.
it's a duo.
I was making the
A
joke
what?
about Halls and Oats because Halls is a brand of throat lozenge, and
Oh,
Yeah.
it is a brand.
yeah,
A brand of
Hall-
oats.
Halls is a brand of throat lozenge, right? Hall soothers.
Like hall is in a corridor.
Yeah, like Hall
Yeah.
soothers, and porridge has oats in it.
Sure.
Pop-
Halls
pop
and
rock.
oats is a pop cure?
Yes. What? Daryl Hall and Gary? Was it Gary Oates? Was that his
John
name?
Oates.
John Oates.
It's just I'm
Let me,
I'm lost. I'm completely lost.
Allow
They're
me
like
to
Simon and
educate.
Garfunkel. Like,
Can
I'm
you
going
write
to
me
educate
write me a
George.
paper on it? I'll read it and then I'll follow up.
There's a YouTube video.
Because it's obviously quite a complicated topic. Oh, okay, right. Fair enough. You can't do pop culture references with me. I don't get things
This isn't
like
even
that.
pop culture. It's not like a topical. It's pop culture from like the 70s.
Well, how am I supposed to know that? I don't know.
I'm the
Do
one
your
who's doing
jokes.
classical music.
Don't expect me to get them. That's all.
Okay, fuck me.
That just didn't work with George.
Nickel got
Nah.
it. Nickel got
I
it.
got it.
I got a groan from Nickel, so there we go. That's all I wanted. I wanted at least
Yeah.
one groan.
For the dad joke.
Yeah, it was a proper pun. Andy Zoltman would be proud of that one. First of all, I feel like we should go to Kyle's corner. Did you get a chance to listen to that album I sent you?
See, I didn't know we were recording today, so I have only had a chance to listen to it twice.
I sent him the album. What was the album even called?
Before the Night by Home?
Before the Night by Home, that's it.
Yeah.
The Silver Night by Ho. What?
Before the Night by Home.
Oh, Home. Very
As
good.
in, I was about
Prior
to say
to the
who they were,
dusk.
I don't know how to feel about
Previously
this
in
album.
the evening.
I don't know.
Out.
It's an album I don't entirely know how to feel about. My experience listening to it, first time round, I was like, I'm going to put this on, I'm just going to familiarize myself with it. So I was writing while also listening to it. Then I think I got a few songs in, and I was like, oh, hey, maybe I should be reviewing this. I actively listened to everything beyond maybe the first few songs.
I'm happy with this first impression.
I will say, first time I listened to it was a more active listening experience. I listened to it again today, but I had it on as background stuff while I did word searches. As an active experience, it's a little grating. If you're sitting down to listen to it, it's a bit grating. If you don't get with the beat in each song, you're fucked, because you've got to put up with that exact beat for at least an entire song. I have nothing against repetition in songs, it's just when it's repeating pretty much every single aspect of the song all the way through. I better like it pretty soon.
Well, the thing with that is
if
if you like the beat a lot, it's really, really good.
there were songs where I did actually find them more interesting. A lot of it I found pretty bland. Listening to it actively, I thought, like, these sounds are things I've heard elsewhere. There's nothing new here for me. The last song on it in particular, I actually thought was the strongest. I don't know, it felt more unique compared to other stuff I'd previously heard of that style. So songs like that, if I like what's being repeated, then, cool, it works quite well. But if I don't, then it gets really boring.
I've always thought of Home as being background music.
Yeah, first time round, so listening to it actively, pretty grating. It's quite annoying, often boring, sometimes good. And then today I was listening to it while doing like word searches and stuff. Background music, I found I was bopping to it. I quite enjoyed it. There were still times I found it was still bland. As background music, if you're wanting an active listening experience, it's not. I don't think it's a good album, but in fact, I suspected, because you do delivery driving, Callum, I suspected that the reason you'd recommended this album is because it's something you listen to in the car while you're doing stuff.
I'm afraid you'd be dead wrong there. I listen to talkie podcasts in the car.
That's fair.
And Dragonforce. When you're road racing, you just get the Dragonforce on.
I haven't listened to
Dragonvore.
I haven't. Oh
For-
god, I haven't listened to Dragonforce for fucking like years.
I
used to listen to them in high school, like the start
I know
of high
they're
school.
so good, but they're just a meme now.
Because I just think they're a bit samey. All the
They
songs
are,
sound
yeah.
the same. It's just guitar, 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 guitar.
Screaming, guitar, screaming, guitar, guitar, more screaming, and some screaming again.
Yeah. High school me thought like, oh, Dragonforce, they're so gnarly.
And then you discovered Slipknot.
I don't actually listen to a lot of Slipknot.
I've never listened to Slipknot.
I love metal. I'm a big metalhead. But I don't actually really like Screamo that much. But I do admit that, is it Corey Taylor is the singer
Corey Taylor.
of
Yeah.
Slipknot? He is an amazing singer. I think he has the second largest, widest vocal range of any singer alive. I think he got something like 7 octaves range. And the singer of the widest vocal range is the singer of, I think they're called Faith No More, or like Angel and Demons or something like that. It's another metal band. We actually talked about this before we started recording this podcast. A lot of metal singers are classically trained because they have to be able to scream and still keep your voice. You need to know
technical expertise.
Yeah,
It's
you need to
not
be trained how to
necessarily
do that.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they're classically trained, but it's that they are enough in good technique that they're then able to use that technique to then apply that to be able to then sing really high. So things like keeping your chest up and keeping the appoggio active, keeping your chest active to be able to keep that support there, and then keeping your belly relaxed and nice and released, but not forcing it up and being all stiff, but just being quite relaxed
And shoulders flat as well. You don't want
Shoulders
moving
flat.
shoulders.
The only time removing shoulders is acceptable is if you are on stage and you are acting at the same time.
Or playing guitar.
Or if you're friends,
Although
just
guitar should be kind of relaxed.
Before we
Je
get
ne
too off
comprende.
topic, before we get too far away from
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm alright with this conversation. I was just
Too
gonna
far
say
from
before
home.
we get too far away from it.
Hey! Sorry.
I think Kyle said that, didn't he?
What?
I thought Kyle said that. I was just repeating.
What?
You
So-
said too far from home. I thought I was just repeating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
You
Oh,
did.
fuck. I'm
Um,
probably
I didn't
gonna.
think there was nothing intended there, but because one of the things that I noted while I was listening to that, a lot of that album reminds me of when the songs sort of pick up and have a livelier kind of tone to them. They remind me. There's hints in there of Gunship, which is an artist I really like. They're really interesting.
Can you tell me more about Gunship? I must admit ignorance to there. I never heard of them. Don't know anything about them.
Gunship is
It's a heavy
you know
metal
that-
version of Jefferson Airplane.
I was gonna say the
I have heard of Jefferson Airplane. I've never heard any of their
Um,
stuff, but I've heard of them.
this whole kind of genre of let's all think about the 80s music
I mean, the 80s is
that
definitely
Hole
having a
definitely
revival right
falls
now.
into. Yeah, what Gunship does with that is they're one of the rare artists where I listen to them and I say like, oh, they've actually taken that whole genre of music and I actually feel like they care about it because
So
I feel like they're one of the few artists that actually manage to capture a sort of energy that should be in that music. A lot of the artists like Home and stuff that are kind of more common. The way I feel about them is they're not making bad music necessarily. It's just that they're using this kind of aesthetic of 80s reminiscence that isn't bad. It's good. But Gunship feel like they're really taking everything. And when you watch like their music videos or you hear like samples or anything like that from their songs, like they're literally taking from like everything. It's like it's actually capturing a kind of spirit. Now, I did not grow up in the 80s, obviously, so I can only
none of us did.
talk so much about this, but to me they feel a lot more sincere in their look back on 80s culture than a lot of the artists I kind of come across seem to. Yeah, Dark All Day is an incredible album. That's the one I recommend if you want to hear their stuff, because the song Dark All Day as well is just incredible.
About Home not being very involved, I think that's definitely kind of deliberate. In fact, the first time
I've always just used Home for
Sorry.
studying.
It's a bit unfair giving you Home to review, because I must admit, I've never actively listened to Home. I've always treated Home as a background music, because it's simple. In fact, how I kind of knew of Home was a YouTuber I watch, Emperor Lemon, uses, and a lot of YouTubers, including Summoning Salt as well, use the song, well, a lot of his songs, but the song We're Finally Landing, more often than not, and Resonance, which is on another album, in the background of their videos, because he is very cool. He doesn't copyright claim or whatever.
Very cool.
He's cool. It's kind of known that, like, Home is cool. You can use Home and he won't sue you or copyright claim or whatever.
Was it Gunship, you said, Kyle?
Gunship, yeah.
Which album was it?
Dark All Day.
Dark All Day,
most
2018.
recent one, if I'm correct.
Home is very much background music, and it's put into this new genre that has appeared in the last 5 years. It's vaporwave, chill lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to.
Yeah. What I would say is the album that I kept having an album going through my head while I was listening to it. By far the closest comparison I can make, and it gets really close sometimes, is Travelers by Patricia Taxon, which is I expect very few people to have heard of that. It's a 15-minute kind of deal. I think it's about 15 to 20 minutes. If you want to get it, it's pay anything, and you can download it for free if you want. It's a very nice album. I think it's one of the, for me, better examples of that chill kind of vibe, while still balancing that with sounding interesting and standing out a bit more. They explore the spacey images that genre conjures up. They kind of explore that in a much more fleshed out way in about half the time of Before the Night. I'd recommend that. Might not be your kind of thing, but for me it explores that tone a bit better.
I'm just listening to Gunship here, and it sounds really well produced.
Oh yeah,
tight.
their production is quite something, yeah.
I wanted to plug a playlist real quick. This
Cool.
music, the Gunship music, kind of reminds me of my friend Nick. Has got a
thank you.
playlist called Nick Wave. No, Nicholas. Anyway, it's just a sick playlist with like vaporwave and synthwave. You know, that sort of vibe. Good for studying, good for listening, because it's actually not just background music, but it's nice. Give it a listen.
I'll stick it in the description. Nico, I believe you had a topic. We've had Kyle. I know I look weird, but I'm pointing to you guys as I see you on the screen. It's for the podcast. We've had Kyle's music review corner. Home, good as background music, not good to actively listen to, which I'd fully agree with. Now let's go with Nickel.
See, on my screen, it's like it's to your
I look like a chipmunk.
the other way
This way?
on my
This way?
screen, but like on yours, it must be like to that way, and I'm like, okay, right, that's pretty.
To me, Kyle's up here, Nickel's over there, George is here.
Right, so that means
Wait,
that
he's
Nickel
behind
is this
George
way.
is here.
Hashtag irony.
I am always the
How is it
there.
ironic? It's just,
Because dabbing's ironic now.
I mean, I don't.
I don't dab ironically.
Oh jeez.
Did I die now?
Why did I say that?
Can I die?
Yeah. So I've been having thoughts this week, right?
Oh, that's dangerous.
Oh, not those.
It's
Oh
very
no.
dangerous, yeah. But I've been thinking about, so we're in the whole COVID-19 pandemic, okay, and it's shit times for everyone, especially in Scotland, where now we can't visit other people, and especially for people who are students, because students have now just been banned from visiting pubs across the whole of the country. At least I believe it's the whole country, but I know that definitely Glasgow students are.
So it's
because
not all bad then.
And it's not all bad.
Students be banned from pubs. It's not all bad.
Yeah, it means more space for us. Because I'm not a student again yet. So I've been thinking a lot recently about the state of things and about how things are going to come back together. Not necessarily for just the economy in general, but theatre and the arts. Okay,
Yeah.
you've probably seen a lot on social media about saving the arts and about saving theatres and things like that. The thing is, if you look back to World War Two, like COVID, it caused a recession in the economy, and the government was forced to make cuts to then be able to provide funds for the military, the people
Can
in the
I
front
can
lines.
I just say one thing? What World War Two, or at least the end of World War Two, yes, it caused a recession, but I can tell you it caused more of a recession in the German economy.
Oh yes, oh yeah,
It absolutely tanked the mark. They had to adopt an entirely new currency.
yeah. But Winston Churchill was asked at the time if he would cut the arts and cut arts funding, and he said, "Absolutely not. Why would I do that?"
Well,
Okay.
they probably sounded more like, absolutely not. Why would I do that?
Something like that.
Yeah, but
And
wasn't he a racist or something?
Except
Yeah.
everyone
better.
was back then.
Except
Everyone was.
No, because he had the big jowls, didn't he? Oh,
Yeah.
we will fight them on the bleachers. I can't do it because I'm wearing headphones. Give me a sec. We will
You're
fight them
still
on the bleachers.
Futurama's Nixon.
We will fight them in the theatre. He was just constantly shaking his head. He was constantly vibrating.
Anyway, and so the course that I was doing before I'm where I'm on house, I did 2 years of a teaching course, and I decided to come out of that because I felt that people were, especially the students, were being taught. They weren't being taught to think for themselves. They weren't taught to be creative, because you can't be taught to be creative. You can be inspired to be creative, and creative people are naturally creative, and you can be guided in certain ways to be creative. But people, especially towards the later stages of primary school, are encouraged to follow the rules, and they're encouraged to be methodical with their work. Looping back to what I said about the arts and all that, at the moment, well, before COVID, arts, especially in schools, has been cut to the bone, to the point where schools are struggling to provide the equipment that students need to be creative. And they're putting more money into subjects that, let's face it, make the economy flourish. But the question that I pose to the three of you, if music didn't exist, now George, I know you're a musician and I'm a musician, and Callum, I know you play guitar.
Even beyond that, music has a big part in my life.
Yeah, exactly. So if music did not exist at all, do you think right where we are now, do you think we would be as socially advanced or even technically advanced from a technology point of view? Say we were, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, nothing came about in music. You know, Pythagoras's work when it came to discovering the octave never worked. Say that never happened, and it was all just logic and theory.
I think that's a really tough question to answer, because music kind of comes from the rest of the way we think. If we weren't musical at all, we also wouldn't be mathematical. We wouldn't have language. So we kind of just wouldn't be human.
Can I just speak off the back of you saying it makes us human? Human. Music is extremely human. I don't think that we wouldn't ever not have music. Music has always been with us, even when we were cavemen, whatever. One of the first things to exist was music in some primitive way. They say that, they hollowed out bones as flutes and they created skin drums. I said a minute ago that music is a very big part of my life because I use music to influence my emotions. I have happy songs. I have songs that when I put on can lift my mood. And nothing else like that in human society has the ability to do that, like music. Music is human. I know this isn't exactly what you asked. I don't think we would ever not have music. I think music is a part of humanity.
You can't imagine a world without music because it's so prevalent in society.
I don't think there would be humanity without music, because music is such a human thing. It wouldn't be
humanity as we know it. It wouldn't be humanity as we know it. And it's been something that I'm like, what if we evolved to a point where actually music, as we've known it throughout the years, I'm talking throughout centuries, what if that in, say, a century's time was all electronic, there was nothing linking back to. I know this won't happen, but hypothetically, if it was all electronic and it was all thought out, there was nothing creative, and it was all logical, I feel it would be really boring. If you know
Okay.
what I mean.
You're saying that electronic music is the death of real music.
I don't think that's what he's saying.
No,
Okay.
No.
no.
The wording's off, but
Yeah, my wording is
am
pretty
I-
abysmal.
am I right in saying your question isn't so much what if music didn't exist, but more if we took away the experimental and subjective avant-garde nature of
Yeah.
music and we stuck to formulas very strictly and just kind of
Absolutely.
the
And
same patterns didn't
yeah,
try to be burned.
Absolutely. Like in classical music, there are themes. There are we see it as rules that they followed. But back at the time, the music theory was not really a thing. It was as we hear popular music now. So if you think back to 1700s, the Baroque era, and the classical era, and that, yes, there was rules that we see composers following. At the time, that was experimental. That was stuff that people were doing.
I guess they didn't realize they were following those rules. They
But
were
yes,
just making the music.
it was things that it was harmonic nuances that they decided they like that sort of idea. They like these suspensions, they like these ornaments, they like the flourishes. A good example is the only Bach. The Bach,
I
not
love that.
not his kids, but
Yeah.
he was a church player in Leipzig.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's favourite composer. I'll be Bach.
Yes. Well, I'm sure he's listened to Bach. I'm sure, but Bach, he would, the way that he would write music is he would find a chord progression that he liked, just as we would in pop music just now. At least this is what we see in his music, and especially with his preludes and fugues, more so with the fugues, where he has this underlying theme, and he has that theme repeats for the whole thing. But as it develops,
kind of like a leitmotif.
Yeah, kind of like a leitmotif, but more kind of like, I kind of describe it like a rhythm section in a band.
Oh, okay.
So rhythm guitar.
It's like a central theme that you keep coming back to.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes. It's not a leitmotif. Is more like a theme to identify something.
Like in the musical version of War of the Worlds. I mean, that uses leitmotif
Yes.
to astounding effect. One of my favorite pieces of music ever.
As he would go on, he would add more to it. So he would add transitions between the chords, passing notes, and things like that. And he would experiment with these things until he found something he liked.
My piano teacher always says he's a jazzer.
I mean, whenever I hear the word jazz, George, you probably go to B movie. I just go to, it's not about the notes I play, it's about the notes I don't play. You don't get it, man. It's
true in all music that it's about what's played and what's not played, because, well, there's such a thing in music as rest.
I suppose like the thing in jazz, isn't it? It's like, you may say that the notes I play don't match, but don't listen to the notes I play. Think about the notes I don't play, man.
With Bach especially, I don't like saying Bach's a classical composer, because he's not. He was Baroque for a start. He was in that stylistic period of the Baroque era, which all these eras overlap. And technically speaking, we are still in a period of classical music, because there are composers that are writing what socially is considered classical music.
It sounds like a contradiction in terms, but there is such a thing as modern classical music, isn't there?
Yeah. So there's this distinct differentiation between popular music and classical music. I was trying to explain this to my colleagues the other day, because I said that trad music, Scottish trad music, is popular music, is pop music. It's not
in
pop
a way,
as a genre. It's popular music because it's not that of a classical style, and so in society we would consider that as part of pop music. But
well, it's popular in my playlists.
If you think about it, right now we've got, I don't know, Ariana Grande, Sia, bloody Anne Marie, I don't know, whoever's on the radio, whoever's popular at the moment. If you think about it, back then, they were the contemporary artists, Bach, Mozart,
Strauss,
third composer.
Puccini,
Yeah, but
Paganini.
but back then, you didn't have the cult of celebrity where it was like, oh my god, I love
Yeah.
Mozart, he's got such a nice butt, or whatever. Although the kicks they wore were pretty tight. But back then, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna buy Mozart's latest CD. It'd be
No.
like, oh, I'm gonna buy Mozart's latest sheet music and learn to play it. They were the contemporary artists of their time.
It
just
would
like
be that you'd
Ariana-
go to the theatre and
Yeah.
see it.
Just like
Yeah, yeah.
Ariana Grande, etc., are first now.
It's one of these things that I don't like to say popular music and classical music unless I'm speaking to someone socially about music. They're not in musical season. I like to say music as a whole. And then if I'm talking about classical music, I am talking about the classical music as a style, not as a collective genre of music. I'm talking about classical music as in Mozart and operas. I'm talking about Verdi. I'm talking about
How
Liszt.
far into romantic do you consider classical to be?
So into the romantic stylistic era, I don't consider romantic to be that. Because
What's Beethoven? Because I know there's a bit
so
of
Beethoven's ambiguous because Beethoven was kind of that precursor into the romantic era. So he's kind of a bit of both. I wouldn't label a composer as being exclusively one style because even Mozart, he stuck to his own personal rules of composition.
But
And
Bach, he kind of baroque the mold a little bit.
Bach,
Hmm.
another good example. Again, always a good example, Bach.
I can't tell if the joke went over your head or if you're just not acknowledging it, Nicole.
I'm just not acknowledging it. I got the joke. I'm
It
just
didn't
not.
deserve it,
I'm not
apparently.
giving it a response.
I thought it was pretty good, but there we go.
But with Bach, he definitely kind of blurred that line as well between Baroque and classical music. And you've got so many of those composers that are like that existed when in schools when they're taught the Baroque era was in the 17th
Austria,
century.
mainly.
And the 18th century was classical, and the 19th century was romantic, and the early 20th century was impressionist. You're taught that in schools, and it's completely not right
Yeah.
because there's people that will adhere to specific styles. Like there are people that will now compose classical style music. There's people now that will compose romantic and impressionist style, while there's still people that will compose Baroque style music.
Speaking of impressionist, is it just me, or is Debussy's piano music just the most beautiful piano music?
Not if you ask.
Oh, come on.
He
Well,
hates
he's
Debussy.
very rigid and structured in his
It
playing.
also doesn't
Yes.
help that Debussy, nowadays, it can mean the arse. In slang
That's
Talk
terms.
shit on my man.
a Family Guy joke as well. That
Is that a Family Guy joke?
It's when he goes to the record
I
shop
genuinely didn't
and the
know
guy's
that.
like,
I
I
genuinely
love
didn't know
Callum.
that.
and it sounds like he's saying
That's
Debussy.
low.
No.
That is low.
I'll send you
Speaking
a
a
link
joke
to
from
that.
Family Guy.
I didn't know that, genuinely. We talk about electronic music. I slightly misunderstood what you were saying. You mean like algorithmic music, like literally a computer
Yes.
making it?
Oh, like
Oh.
the thing that I was researching.
I have such an eclectic taste in music.
I think we all do.
I'm quite a big fan of EDM as well. There's this one artist that I quite like called Savant. He does electronic music, obviously, but he manages to put so much of his soul into it. You can tell he creates so much emotion and feeling through his music. I used to be that guy who was like, oh, electronic music isn't proper music. But now I view electronic music as just it's an evolution of music. It's like, oh, we used to play music on proper instruments. It's like, now our instruments is computers. You can still have just as much expression through electronic music as you can through a fucking flute or something. Or a harpsichord with Mozart. It's not a perversion or a degradation of music. It's just an evolution of the tools that we have available to us.
So do you think it's a perversion to do what I did and create an artificial intelligence that writes music?
That... Yes, no... I'll get back to you in 20 years' time.
That kind of ties into what I was going to sort of go into. To kind of return a little bit more to the question, it was what if music had stayed, if we'd just stuck to the same formula?
Yeah.
that we initially established.
Yeah. If we considered
Um,
music as a formula as opposed to being
Yeah.
a mode of expression.
Okay. So I want to talk about modern art because I know fuck all about music theory,
Fine.
but I am big on sort of surrealism and have previously looked a lot at like Dadaist art and so on.
Kyle, I was telling Nickel about you don't play it often, but when you played the piano at high school, I know you played it a couple times, and you sort of just it was kind of like you noodled on it. We were saying you don't really have the preconception of music theory, so you don't follow the rules of like diatonic which we
That's
were talking about. You just played, and it was incredible how it sounded. It was musical and it was lovely music, but it just didn't follow the rules.
We're literally
Right.
just talking about serialism. Yeah.
Yeah.
we were.
Yeah. So this is something. So I was saying to George that when I was in second year, before I decided to drop teaching, I did a unit that was contemporary composition, and this is what led into that discussion about atonal and serialism. And basically, one of the things that I had to learn to do was disassociate what I knew in my head as being diatonic, i.e., fitting within the same key, and feeling what I believed to be diatonic, and weird chords with strange intervals that sound really discordant. While it might sound atonal to some people, would be diatonic to others
Would you
because it would
say
fit within the key.
would you say that almost a knowledge of music theory is sometimes
Debilitating.
a vice? Yeah, vice. Debilitating,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, exactly. And you know that I also teach guitar and I teach singing. I teach piano to some people. One of my key beliefs, even if I'm teaching them acoustic guitar, which acoustic guitar for folk and stuff, I don't like teaching them to play the guitar because anyone can play the guitar. I teach them to be a musician because you could say that a busker in the street is a musician, but especially where I am in the center of a big city, and especially where where I work in the center of a big city, there's a lot of buskers, and I hear the same songs over and over again. I never hear any original music. It was lovely because there was a bunch of jazz musicians from the establishment, the prestigious establishment that's in the city, and they had brought a keyboard, a saxophone, a trumpet, and a double bass, and they weren't playing anything that was set. They were improvising.
Entirely liquid instruments.
It was amazing, and I almost didn't want to go on my lunch because what they were playing was interesting, and I was like, I'm actually really enjoying just having you there and paying attention to what you're playing because interesting what
tip
you're
them?
trying to communicate.
Here, Kyle was about to say something before he visited the bathroom. I kind of want to hear
Yes.
it.
I had very limited experience of playing just fragments of other songs, but I think for me, just from doing that, and I don't know what I learned along the way. I think it was just that I thought to myself, well, if I'm hitting keys that are too close together or in this certain pattern or, whatever, it's not going to sound good. And then also just,
See,
I
I
never played
wish.
anything quick because I can't figure it out that fast. So I was just like, I think this will sound all right. This might sound all right. And then I'd hit like quite a few tough
Yeah.
ones. It's that thought of, if I'm hitting a key that's over here and then a key that's roughly this far from it, it should be all right.
On from that, there's a guitarist called Steve Vai, who's hugely inspirational to me. And his guitar teacher, Joe Satriani, I'm going to see him next year, as long as COVID doesn't stop it. So excited for that. Steve Vai was doing an alien guitar sounds masterclass sort of thing on Facebook back in April. And I was rewatching some of it, and he was talking about ear training. This is where people who say that they're songwriters or that they composers, they write song, when they put it that way, it always sounds like the way they do it is theoretical. It's algorithmic. It's not
Yeah, compose, that
free.
word.
When I write music, the music that I have written, I don't like saying that I've composed it. I like saying I've written it, but I like saying that I've experimented to come to that in conclusion. I'd show you some of my manuscript books, but they're all buried in the other room. My manuscript books, especially from the stuff that I've been doing since I've not been at university, has been hugely experimental. Done it in like snippets, and I've been like, right, I like that, and that kind of goes well and leads into that. So let's put that together, see how that sounds. I firmly believe the approach of improvising and experimenting and using your ear to create music as opposed to using theory to create music is a far better tool than theory, especially to create modern music. It should be experimental. And if I had someone like you, Kyle, in my classes that I was like on placement and that, I would be all over them. Because I'd be like, I want to pick your brain. Why are you doing that? Why do you think that that's a good thing to do?
He wouldn't be able to answer you is the thing. That's it. It would just be like, I just know to do that. That would be their
exactly.
answer.
But I like being able to, especially people who I'm teaching. I do this with my own students, and I say to them, how have you come to, if when you're improvising, how have you come to that? I know I've told you that this is the key and these are the scales that we're liking to use, but you've given me something that's very interesting. So I want to know why you decided to go down that route. And even if it's not like a cohesive answer, which I've had one person that's told me, oh, I was playing about with this and it sounded cool.
What would you do if somebody just said, I don't know why it sounds good. It sounds good. That's why I chose to do it.
Yeah,
that's what it all comes down to.
I would tell them that's fine, because with music, especially musicians who make music, they and
What
do
else
it
do they do?
well.
As musicians tend to do, yeah.
Yeah, they make like what we listen to.
Aye.
The stuff that comes
Actually,
out.
most of the stuff we listen to, the musicians don't make. They have somebody else make for them.
You have someone else make it for them, and that's why a lot of pop music as a genre, not as a collective thing, sounds so methodical, because you've got verse 1, chorus, verse 1, bridge, verse 3, sometimes chorus, chorus, chorus till the end.
I'm probably gonna blur my camera for this bit, just to give context to why it is blurred. I'm eating food at the moment, and I don't exactly want to become a mukbang channel. So
that's fair enough. But with yes. So going back to what you said about someone saying, "I just don't know," I like them saying that they don't know. It then allows me to then say, "Well, let's have a discussion about that, and let's think how you've come to that conclusion." Or even if I've got a half-hour session with them as opposed to an hour session, I'll say, "Well, have a think about it and get back to me next week. And if you still can't get back to me, that's absolutely fine. I'm just interested to know your thought process behind it." And I like music that is not logically thought out and not methodical. I like stuff that's experimental. I like stuff that's different.
Sorry.
What?
I made myself laugh when you talk about I like stuff that's not thought out, that's like not methodical. All I could think of was, do you like jazz?
Trying to think of why I've the things I've made over time, like why I've done them the way I have, because I don't think I've ever made anything with technical knowledge. I can have a technical knowledge of something to some degree, but then when I go to make it, all of that just goes, and my brain's just thinking very instinctively. And I think the closest I can get to an explanation is just,
It felt right.
I mean, yeah, it feels right, but I think for a lot of that, right? So I like films, right? And for me, films are visual thing, films or TV. When that feels right to me, I really feel it, and then I think whenever I make something, I'm just trying to recreate that feeling rather than something that I know in a logical sense. It is hard to explain, but I mean, I recently got into doing collages, and what I find with a lot of that is
I love those, by
I
the way.
work with alignment.
cool.
My brain just does alignment in a way. It's not always like exact or sometimes close, but I just know where I want things to be. If we're going back to the piano example, I don't know what the chord's gonna necessarily sound like exactly, but I know roughly where I want it to be. I don't know.
Well,
See, the thing with theory is that it allows you to put your feelings into some sort of structure so that you can name your feelings in a sense, and then you can go to them easier. So you can kind of just I don't know, reach those feelings you want with a bit more ease.
Yeah.
I think that's what theory should be for, at least.
Talking about AI, there was, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, there in Japan, they created a robot that was programmed to conduct an orchestra. You might have seen this or read about it.
I mean, I suppose
So
technically, couldn't you just get a metronome to do that? I mean, it's not that difficult.
Well, the
it's a
conductor
feedback
is
system.
a conductor.
Right,
Traditionally, it's a visual embodiment of the music, and my band's in the other room. But when you're conducting, you've got your beat going, okay, and then everything goes on. If a robot's doing it, it's just one arm, and it's just going to keep going the same speed, and it's going to slow down if it's programmed to slow down.
It's not just keeping time, it's improvising. I don't know, somebody in the horn section, their valve goes wrong or whatever. It's being able to improvise and
Keep going. Yeah.
yeah. It's so much more than that. It's directing the orchestra, not just keeping time, isn't it?
Yes. So when you don't know what a conductor does, you just think they're just waving a stick to keep the time, to keep the beat. It's a lot more than that. So when you're conducting, a conductor will usually use two hands. Lots of high school conductors that haven't had any formal proper conducting training, they just do this with two hands. And they kind of bounce a bit to get the kids engaged, but it's for me, it doesn't. I don't like that.
I mean, you don't. If a conductor is basically just a metronome, you don't really need them anyway, do you? Because that's like any orchestra worth their salt can keep
you
time.
literally have a flashing light.
Yeah, like any
Just
orchestra
flashing.
worth their salt.
Lights are really difficult to follow.
But
in
lights are
music.
really difficult to follow. Yeah.
If you're like the BBC concert orchestra or whatever, I'd say any orchestra worth their salt can keep time just by themselves. They're musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And with the choir that I'm in, it's the same thing. We can keep time with ourselves. We don't get faster. We can keep time with ourselves. We can keep tune with ourselves. Okay, even without something like a piano or an orchestra to keep us in tune, we can keep in tune. But the conductor, every time he'll, in rehearsals especially, he'll do something different to see what it sounds like. He'll experiment, and then he'll say, right, I'm going to do either this or that, depends on how I feel on the night.
Yeah, it's almost like a composer is to a orchestra what a director is to a film. If they're no good, you could do the whole thing without them. If they know what they're doing and they do their job right, then they are vital to the production.
Am I right in
And-
saying this is the difference between an orchestra that's conducted and an orchestra that's not conducted?
I mean, yes, but which
Like,
one?
I mean, the lines represent how they're listening to each other,
It's
or
like-
who they're following.
You could take the conductor away, and so once the musicians know the piece, you could take the conductor away, and they would be able to play the piece.
They'll listen to each other, and
they'll
they'll
listen to
listen
each
to
other.
themselves, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And usually, if there's any cues need to be given, if it's an orchestra, they'll look at the lead of the orchestra, in the first violins.
Yeah.
They'll look at them if there's a cue. that needs to be given.
Concertmaster, isn't it?
Yep. And however, the conductor is there to give those cues and to make sure people come in the right place. Every orchestra will always play, if they're to play that piece, they'll always play exactly the same way. The conductor is then there to add the extra bits, especially when it comes to professional orchestras and choirs. They're there to add the flourishes, they're there to add the expression. And that's where, especially classical music and this piece by Eric Whittaker, it's called When David Heard. Okay, if you search it on Spotify, you'll find a CD that's titled Cantos Sagrados, which is a set of music by Sir James Macmillan. The text is, when David heard that Absalom was slain, he went up into his chamber over the gates and wept. My son. It's like a 14 to 20-minute piece, something like that. Besides those words, and one other wee line later on in the bit, there's only two words. My son. But it's all about word painting, and it's all about finding the expression that David felt when he discovered that his son was slain, that his son was dead. And it's all about pain and emotion. And it's these two words that go through the whole thing. It's all very discordant, as you'd imagine someone in pain and suffering would be. And you get to a bit, and there's a few words.
Isn't that...
Would God I have died for thee? I had died for thee, sorry.
The repetition of the word "my son"?
Yeah.
Isn't that a theme throughout the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling? Isn't that all about
Yes.
if yada 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 yada, then you'll be a man, my son?
Yeah, it's different in this case because it's from the text.
I was just wondering if the one
David.
was kind of inspired by the other, or if it's just like a coincidence.
That I
Or
don't know.
same source, maybe.
That I don't know. But when David heard, but you get to this, the repetition of my son is his pain, is his disbelief that his son is dead, that he no longer has that son. It's like if you had your offspring, and they suddenly died out of nowhere. How would you feel about that? You'd feel distraught. You'd
I
feel
can't even
absolutely
imagine.
pained.
Yeah,
and especially at our age, because we're in our early 20s.
I mean, we are in our early 20s, but
Like, you
like
just doxed me.
this whole episode is a bit serious, which is fine. I think it would be quite nice to have a bit of a serious episode, but
We've had
Call
a
it
bit
the
of fun as
serious
well.
one.
I am in my early 20s. I don't mind saying, at this point in time, that being the 26th of September 2020, I am 22 years of age. But, although the fact I was an adult at 18, obviously, that is how the law works in the UK, it does not, and purely talking about time-wise, that was 4 years ago, it does not feel like 4 years ago that I was 18. You say about like us having children and all that, and we're in our early 20s.
Yeah.
I feel like time is getting quicker. So it's
Yes.
gonna be like no time at all, like,
Yeah.
like to us, that we do have kids.
Yes, exactly. But it's it's that feeling that if like you've seen it on portrayed on television shows, but the piece is that sort of musical expression of it. And when we performed that piece in the Usher Hall, we ended up, there was a woman in the audience.
Sorry,
who,
I was just looking at
There was
George's
a
Square and just started playing around. I'm sorry.
at the so it starts off with the When David Heard text, and then it goes into my son, and then you get to would God I had died for thee, or something like that. My voice is not where it should be at the moment, but
You haven't warmed up.
It's-
It's understandable. When I said that, I sounded really patronizing. Like, oh, you haven't
No,
warmed
you're
up.
alright.
I mean that genuinely. Obviously, it's like asking a comedian tell us a joke. A comedian, when they're just about to come onto stage, they like psych themselves up. They're in a frame of mind to be funny, do comedy. But if you just see them in the street and ask like, oh, tell us a joke, it's like they can't do it because they're not on. Even more so with a singer because they need to warm up their vocals and all that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay,
a comedian will always have one on hand, just in case events
Just
like
in
that do
case, yeah.
occur.
But anyway, but after that bit, it then had a wee bit on, but then it came to a bit that there was just a bit of silence, and you could just in the Usher Hall, you just hear this woman weep, and
Aw.
then because it was just silence, and you just heard this woman just weep, and then it went on to when David heard that Absalom was slain, and then all that bit in the end. And then at the end of the performance, it was just silence. Because people were... It was just that emotional roller coaster of, holy crap, what's happened? I strongly suggest, I'll link it to you guys, but I strongly suggest that you take a wee listen to it, if you have the time.
I mean, it's exactly that. That music has an innate ability to affect our
To
emotions,
make you
like,
feel stuff that
like-
you never
like
think
nothing
you could
else.
feel.
And I think,
And
that is a perfect ending point. If
I think
if
so too.
everybody else is okay with that.
Yeah, to clarify, my bit about electronic music earlier on was not a dig at electronic music.
Oh no! I wasn't saying that.
Does this make you feel stuff, Nickel? Does this music make you feel?
Hannon exercises.
Right.
No, that drives me insane.
Given I've been taking a bit of a step back, and George did the intro. Kyle or Nickel, which one wants to do the outro?
I've been speaking a lot, so Kyle, take it away.
Kyle, take the outro.
What in the fuck am I meant to say?
I
mean,
Whatever comes to your mind.
You see, there's a couple things here. One, I forget what you normally say, and two, like, Nickel has just gone through this incredibly engaging, emotional narrative that, like, if I was just like, all right, everybody, thanks for listening. Like, I know
it's a bit. Okay, then. Should we make it Nickel?
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try something.
Try some.
Anyway, bye, guys. Sorry.
Look after your bones and drink your goddamn water. Goodbye.
Wear a mask or a face covering of some description.
Yeah. Wear your goddamn mask.
And
I'm
don't come
in
to a retail shop and argue that masks are ridiculous. Please.
Kyle, tell them to look after their bones.
And if you meet somebody on a country road, go up on the fucking verge.
Guys, shut up and let Kyle to tell them look
And take me
after
home.
their bones.
Wait, what? What?
Tell them to look after their bones.
Look after your bones, right?